Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we talk about a very interesting sword with a very international and very long history. I'm referring to the Dutch Klewang. Originally the term Klewang was used to refer to a traditional Indonesian weapon, but it is also the term that was used by the Dutch army in naming the standard issue sword for their KNIL troops. KNIL, K-N-I-L, refers to Dutch colonial regiments or to Indonesian troops in the Dutch army. So it's initially already an international sword in the sense that it was planned and designed in one place for use in another. But it also has an international history in terms of its manufacturing. Its manufacturing is tightly connected to its timeline, so let's first talk about that. It's a sword with a very long service life, spanning from 1889, when we have the first iteration of this sword, to after World War II. So around 60 years of active service life. And events happening during these 60 years determined where this sword was produced. Initially, it was produced in Germany, so it has Solingen marked blades. This would be the model 1889. It was then produced in the Netherlands, in Hembrugge, which was the production facility for Dutch weapons. And so we have a lot of these are marked Hembrugge. Following the German occupation of the Netherlands, for obvious reasons, the Dutch army was not able to produce their own weapons on their own soil anymore, so they outsourced production to the United States. So the swords that were produced after 1941 normally have American markings from American makers, including Milsko, for example. What sounds pretty straightforward at the moment isn't necessarily as straightforward, because a lot of swords were produced and assembled in the place of production, but many of them were produced and then assembled elsewhere. So the mark on the blade does not necessarily tell you all the information you may need to know to place a specific Klewang in time and space. Luckily, however, there are a bunch of other details. So for example, small details on like these square notches on the guard, details in the size of the screw, for example. There's a whole bunch of things that can help us then pinpoint a Klewang in a more precise way. This sword, a lot of these were unpaid for, unfortunately, by the Dutch government due to overwhelming reasons of World War II. And so the already manufactured blades in the United States were then reused as a new weapon, which was the US Navy cutlass. So if you know and like the US Navy cutlass, it takes direct inspiration from the Dutch Klewang, if not being an actual Dutch Klewang, in origin at least. Another interesting tidbit of information I think here is that a lot of these were captured by Japanese soldiers during their invasion of, during their expansion in Southeast Asia in the early phases of World War II. And a lot of these were adapted into a Japanese sidearm, which was called heiho. Sorry for my pronunciation. I'm not even sure it's pronounced like that, but it's written heiho. And a lot of these were then captured by Allied forces after the defeat of Japan. And if I'm not mistaken, usually the modification the Japanese soldiers did was remove the basket hilt, like this basket guard, and there were some slight other modifications. So some Dutch Klewangs also kind of morphed into a Japanese sidearm. I think that's it, and I think we can dive into the details. Okay, so let's look at the Klewang and its scabbard. So the first thing I want to mention is that I'm not sure the scabbard is original. Most of the ones I've seen have the seam at the center of the back. This one has it kind of joining
the leather at the top, so I don't know about that. The shape definitely looks authentic, but other than that, I can't really say. One thing I want to notice is that this seems to me for sure, this loop, to be added later. You can see the leather is different, both in thickness, in color, and texture of the leather. It just does not match. So this was a later addition for sure. And the frog and this area with this loop is actually a different leather from both the scabbard and the loop. So my impression is that this perhaps may be the only original piece. You can see it has even a different wear compared to the scabbard and a different stain. But I don't know, it might be that this instead is a perfectly legitimate scabbard. It is old for sure, and the thread on the stitching is the same, so at some point they were worked on together. I just don't know if it was during production. We have this brass brass blade, I guess, kind of covering the throat of the scabbard. And then we have the loop, the tongue here to connect the frog holder, the button to the frog. A lot of these break off, so again, I don't know if this is authentic or not, but it's there, so that's a good sign. Moving on to the sword. You can see the sheet metal guard has kind of come loose. It should normally be fixed under this lip and then probably soldered maybe to this little button that you see there. So I'm not sure, but it should be fixed somehow. And it's not at the moment, but if we look underneath it, we'll see on this side, we'll see the leftover of a Milsko production mark. So this is a American blade. However, we do not have a bakelite grip, so this might be a American blade that was added, that was assembled in Europe or in Indonesia. Or it might be a composite of other pieces, because if you look here, there's even a shim, so there's something not completely right about it. So it's not factory new, let's say. You can also see these little notches in the center hole in the guard. These, by measuring them or by their presence or absence, you can determine where a certain Klewang may be produced. I'll put a great article to be able to identify them in detail in the description. We can see the narrow fuller. Even the shape of the fuller and its width can help determine where a certain Klewang was produced. So as far as I measured, they all match. It is a Milsko American produced blade for sure. And we have the lovely clipped tip, which has been sharpened. So this false edge is sharp, or at least was sharp at a point. The blade also was sharp, and it was sharpened right down up to the, almost up to the ricasso. There are no other marks that I can tell. So this is the Klewang.
So I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. This is a very nice sword to handle. You can feel it was designed with practicality and like heavy duty use in mind more than fanciness or design. Nevertheless, it's a very iconic weapon, and as most of the weapons I'm showing you, if you have the chance to pick one up, hold one, or own one, I strongly suggest you do, because it's very nice. It's a very nice feeling and very interesting to handle. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.